Welcome to the CEO Insider Podcast, brought to you by YTexas. My name is Sandy McIlree. On today's episode, we'll talk to Dr. Ray Perryman. He's the president and CEO of the Perryman Group, an economic research and analysis firm based in Waco, Texas. Over the past 30 years, Dr. Perryman has helped recruit corporations, providing tens of thousands of jobs through economic development work, resolved billion-dollar legal issues, and revamped public policy through impact assessments and other studies. His firm has measured economic impacts for corporate locations and expansions involving billions in investments, and his economic forecasts are used by corporations and government agencies alike. Dr. Perryman has been called a genius by the Wall Street Journal, a world-class scholar by Business Week, the unofficial state economist by the New York Times, the most quoted man in Texas by Texas Monthly, and the state's premier barbecue connoisseur by the Dallas Morning News. Enjoy this episode of the CEO Insider Podcast with Dr. Ray Perryman. Dr. Perryman, thank you very much for taking the time to join us here on the CEO Insider Podcast.
My pleasure. Sorry, my voice is a little weak today.
Oh, that's all right. There's something definitely going around. I've got it too, and my wife does. And of course, you know what happens then, right? The whole family gets it. You got a whole house full of people.
Absolutely.
What we like to do here on this podcast, it's really to create a communication channel for CEOs to hear about what's happening around the state of Texas, and really in particular with executives who are new to Texas. So before we dig in to the forecast, I'd like to kind of everyone to understand who you are, what you do, the types of reports you produce, specifically the Texas Letter and Economic Forecast. Can you give us just a general background of who you are and what you do?
Sure. I have about 40 years experience studying the economy of Texas as well as the rest of the world. But we have a consulting firm that's been in existence now for about 4 decades, and we do forecasting, we do impact assessments, regulatory work, forensic support, and economic development work, a wide variety of things. And the two publications you're referencing are our newsletter, and then we also have a subscription forecast service.
So when you're doing the forecasting for the economy, what are the factors that really come into play?
Well, we have a very large economic modeling system that literally has millions of factors in it, and then we go from there to talking to people a lot. You know, me being out and about talking to people, interviewing people in various industries and that sort of thing to see what's going on. And what's important varies from time to time. Right now we have a close focus on the oil and gas industry, obviously, and other times we seem to have more of a focus on the tech industry, and we have some of that now as well. But it all kind of depends on what's going on at the time. As you know, as long as I've been doing this, we've been through a couple of financial crises and quite a few other things along the way.
How often is it that you see an emerging economy like we have in Texas over the last 20 years? You mentioned the tech industry. How much time do you give it where you say, yep, this is for real?
Well, it all depends on the situation. Here in Texas, we were lucky. Expanded the MCC in the early 80s and Cemetech in the mid 80s in Austin. That pretty well cemented the fact that there would be a lot of tech companies coming to Austin, and that would spread throughout the state. So we were able to spot that pretty easily here. But a lot of times you just kind of have to watch it evolve over time. But those were huge catalysts to what happened here in Texas. And
can you, what's your take on the present economy and the future economy in the state of Texas? And if we can kind of break it into regions, I know because Texas is so diverse. You've got Houston with a completely different economy than Austin, and Austin completely different than Dallas and San Antonio. Can you give us an idea, region to region, what the future economy and the present economy in the state of Texas is?
Sure. It really is an extremely diverse economy, which about anything you want to name is here somewhere. And as I look at things right now, most of the state is doing pretty well. I mean, our growth has been great. We see momentum slowing just a little bit over the next year, but quite frankly, we don't think that what we did last year is sustainable. We just simply hit too many capacity constraints. But still a very strong performance, outperforming the U.S. economy. The excitement in the state right now seems to be the energy industry, and that's because of the very large finds that have occurred out in the Permian Basin, combined with a dramatic drop in the production costs of oil through the shale technology. And so those things have come together to create a lot of excitement, but it doesn't stop in the Permian Basin because obviously for the oil to be successful, it has to get to the Gulf and be exported. Mm-hmm. So that brings in pipelines, it brings in all the ship channels and ports in Texas and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of potential in those areas right now. The tech sector is pretty solid. We've had a lot of significant new locations recently. Obviously, the entire tech sector globally is going through some challenges right now, but the Texas sector seems to be doing quite. Just recently had a couple of nice announcements of things that will expand, and that's always something that's. As far as doing it region by region, I mentioned West Texas is pretty much the oil economy drives it out there. If you move into the Dallas-Fort Worth area, extremely diverse economy. It's the financial center of the region. It's the trade center of the region. It's the transportation center of the region. So basically, when the region's doing well, you can pretty well expect Dallas to be doing well. And Dallas-Fort Worth area has been one of the top growth markets in the country for quite some time, and there's every reason you'd expect that to continue. Austin has probably day in and day out been the fastest growing economy in Texas, and that's largely because of the technology sector. A lot of positive things going on there right now. The recent opening of a medical school is very important in Austin at the University of Texas because it gives them the last to move into the sort of next round of technology where a lot of things start merging together, one of which is biosciences and medical research. San Antonio has been a very strong economy. In fact, San Antonio added more population than the other city in the country last year. And there's been a number of factors driving that. Their tourism sector is very strong. Their manufacturing sector continues to grow. With the Eagle Ford Shale, they picked up some energy in recent years. So there's a lot of positive things going on really throughout the state. The Houston area, obviously, the economy there is a three-legged stool. One is the port, one is the energy sector, and one is the health and biosciences sector. Health and biosciences is growing quite well. The ports, obviously, with the storms and that sort of thing that happens, has some ups and downs. But on the whole, exports are growing, so therefore the activity at the port is growing. And then when you add to that the petrochemical complex and the entire energy sector, again, you're going to see a lot of investment, not only in Houston, but Corpus Christi and Beaumont and Brownsville. All the major port areas in Texas are going to see quite a bit of investment over the next few years in getting themselves ready to accommodate this big increase in both in terms of oil exports, crude and refined, LNG exports, and a number of other things. So as you look around right now, the border region faces some challenges with the uncertainty with Mexico right now, but it has been showing some good solid growth. So as you look around the state right now and the various regions, most places are doing pretty well. You obviously find pockets, where some commodity prices are down in agriculture and things like that. But most areas are doing really well right now.
So when you have a state that every region seems to be doing well, it makes me look ahead, 20, 30 years. How are we, and what is your opinion as far as investment in infrastructure? We often hear, about a bullet train. Are our airports going to be able to keep up? What is your opinion, your take on infrastructure in the state of Texas, keeping pace with the growing economies?
Well, we have some challenges. Obviously, it's going to take a lot more funding to build the infrastructure that we need. Texas does not really have a mass transit infrastructure to speak of, which a lot of places do. Yet we now have 4 of the 11 largest cities in the country are in Texas, and yet we don't have that type of transit in a major way. And obviously we'll need more roads to move more people around, and water and sewer and water supplies and all those things that are part of infrastructure. Sandy, I'd also mentioned the education infrastructure is very important, and we are falling behind in that area. And as you know, the workforce of the future is going to require a lot more training, a lot more sophistication, a lot more ability to adapt to new things, and we really need to be stepping up and meeting that challenge as well. So I do think a lot of things are going well for Texas. Our cost is good, our location is good, our plentiful supply of workers is good, our linkage to the global economy is good, our dominance of the tech sector, the growth in the energy sector, all those things look very good for Texas. We can't lose sight of the fact that we really do have some challenges, some very real challenges in terms of both education and what we typically think of as infrastructure.
And when you mention education, I think that goes hand in hand with talent and the talent war that is out there across this, well, not just in Texas, competing with the rest of the globe. I'm curious what your take on what kind of burn rate do we have on the current talent coming out of the state of Texas? Is it here to stay?
Well, we're doing quite well right now, but a lot of it's because people moved into Texas that were educated elsewhere, and we have a lot of in-migration to Texas. reasonable to assume that will continue because those types of things tend to follow job opportunities, and Texas has had a number of them for quite some time. We've been rated by CEOs as the best economy in the country for 10 or 12 straight years. There's every reason to think that will continue to happen. But in terms of our own internal population, our demographics are shifting very rapidly, and we have some very real challenges. We're educating some very good folks right now, but if you look down the road at how many people are going to be here, what the composition of that group is going to be, and what the educational challenges are going to be, we have to put a lot more resources into that education.
Manufacturing numbers in Texas have been up over the last few years. Are we in a good place to see these growth numbers continue?
We are to some extent. As you know, the energy sector is going on a real roll right now, and a lot of our manufacturing in Texas is energy-centric. It's energy-related manufacturing, both in the standpoint of things like the products of the energy sector, like refining and petrochemicals, as well as all the equipment and pipe and everything else that goes into the process. So that's coming back some. The tech sector is certainly cyclical, but again, we have some really good opportunities taking place there now. And between those two sectors, you capture a lot of the Texas manufacturing. There's also some food processing, some transportation, and various things. But the core areas of it are looking pretty solid right now. I think as a general proposition, we're probably likely to see over a long period of time technology to continue to displace manufacturing workers. I mean, that's happened all over the world, and particularly in the more advanced economies. And I think that's going to be an ongoing trend, but I think we'll continue to set records in manufacturing output all the time, but we'll probably do it with fewer workers than it would have taken, say, 20 years ago to produce the same amount.
One of the attractions of companies, and they are relocating to Texas like crazy, not only that, but they're also expanding within the state of Texas. The very, very attractive thing to them is the cost of doing business. Is it going to stay low? The magic question, can we continue to offer the cost of business at a low rate going forward?
Oh, I think we have some real advantages there. The way the state is situated, I mean, we have major ports and major airports, and again, we need to build some better infrastructure. But the cost of living in Texas has certainly come up some in recent years, but it's still very competitive relative to the rest of the country. And there are a lot of structural impediments. We have a better regulatory environment in terms of keeping business costs down than some places. And our tax climate is pretty good. I mean, it could be better, but we have a pretty solid tax climate as well. And so when you put all that together, I do think we have some cost advantages. One of the biggest ones is simply that although we have to train them, we have workers available in Texas, and there's pretty much a workforce shortage all over the country.
Dr. Perryman, is there anything in the legislative session that has caught your eye or your ear that you would like to share with our audience?
Well, they'll be looking at transportation infrastructure again, which they always do. The big issue that's getting the most attention this year is school finance, and it's going along. At the same time, they're trying to do property tax relief and school finance when we finance most of the schools by property tax. So there's a kind of a yin and yang going on there, but hopefully this will be a time we really start to address the education issues in a fundamental way. There seems to be more energy behind that than there has been in quite some time, and so I hope we see that happen. I hope we stay away from some of the divisive things, the social legislation, and that sort of thing that can have kind of a negative effect on the state's business climate. But I think pretty much we'll see the same issues we've seen for quite some time, but with the education issue maybe getting a little more attention than usual.
Dr. Perryman, thank you very much for being part of this podcast, for sharing with our audience your forecast for the future for the state of Texas and beyond. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.